The coffee maker hissed as I wiped down the same table for the third time. My hand stayed steady despite the fear running through my chest. Miguel's diner in El Paso wasn't much to look at. Cracked vinyl booths, flickering lights, and an old grill. But it was perfect for someone who needed to disappear. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name tag read Rosa, though that hadn't always been my name. 3 months ago, I was Agent Isabella Moreno, 15-year veteran of the DEA's Special Operations Division. 3 months ago, I was testifying before a federal grand jury about our investigation into the Aguila Cartel's money laundering network. 3 months ago, my partner Marcus died in what the newspapers called a tragic car accident. I knew better. The bell above the door chimed. I looked up from my table wiping to see him walk in. Tall, lean, wearing a perfectly pressed white shirt despite the desert heat. Designer sunglasses even though the sun had set an hour ago. He moved like a predator. Smooth, deliberate, aware of every exit and every person in the room. My blood turned to ice water. Luis Herrera, the Aguila Cartel's head of security. The man whose photograph I'd studied for 2 years. The man whose voice I'd listened to on hundreds of hours of surveillance recordings. The man who'd personally ordered the elimination of 3 federal agents and a prosecutor's family. He was here, in my diner, looking for me. I forced my breathing to stay steady, kept my expression blank as I watched him scan the nearly empty restaurant. An elderly couple shared a piece of pie in the corner booth. A trucker nursed his 3rd cup of coffee at the counter. Normal people living normal lives. Unaware that death had just walked through the door, Luis chose a booth in my section. Of course he did. Nothing was ever coincidence in this world. I approached his table with the practiced shuffle of a tired waitress. Order pad ready, pen poised. What can I get you, honey? His dark eyes studied my face with predatory intensity. Up close, I could see the small scar above his left eyebrow. A souvenir from a D-raid in Tucson where he'd barely escaped. I'd been on that raid. I'd been the one shooting at him as he fled across the rooftops. Just coffee, he said in accented English. His voice was exactly as I remembered from the recordings. Smooth as silk, dangerous as a loaded gun. Black. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I nodded and headed to the coffee station. My mind raced. How had he found me? The marshals had assured me my new identity was bulletproof. Rosa Martinez, divorced waitress from Phoenix. No family, no connections to law enforcement. I'd practiced her backstory until it became second nature. Lived her mundane life until I almost believed it myself. As I poured his coffee, I caught my reflection in the stainless steel surface. Brown hair instead of black. Colored contacts that turned my dark eyes hazel. 20 pounds heavier thanks to padding carefully sewn into my uniforms. Even my own mother wouldn't recognize me at first glance, but Luis Herrera wasn't most people. He was a professional killer who'd survived in the cartel world by noticing details others missed. I brought him the coffee. Set it down with hands that didn't shake despite the adrenaline flooding my system. Years of undercover work had taught me to control my physical responses, to project calm when my heart was hammering against my ribs. "Thank you, Rosa," he said, reading my name tag with deliberate emphasis. "You know, you look familiar. Have we met before?" The question hung in the air like smoke from a gun barrel. I gave him the vacant smile of a tired service worker, all the while calculating distances to exits, inventorying potential weapons, assessing civilian positions. "I get that a lot," I said with a slight West Texas drawl I'd perfected. "People say I got one of those faces. You want anything to eat with that coffee?" He took a slow sip, never breaking eye contact. I'm looking for someone. A woman who used to work for the government. She testified against some very important people. Caused them a lot of trouble. My stomach clenched, but I kept the bored expression on my face. Sounds serious. But honey, the only government work I ever did was processing unemployment claims. And that was years ago. These days it's just coffee. And apple pie. Luis smiled, and it was the most frightening expression I'd ever seen. All teeth, no warmth. This woman, she cost my employers millions of dollars. Made them look weak in front of their competitors. They take that very personally. He reached into his jacket, and every muscle in my body tensed. But instead of a weapon, he pulled out a photograph. Slid it across the table toward me. It was my official portrait from 5 years ago. Agent Isabella Moreno in full dress uniform. Hair pulled back severely. Jaw set in determined confidence. The woman I used to be. Her name was Isabella Moreno. Luis continued conversationally. 34 years old, decorated agent, specialized in financial crimes. She disappeared right after the trial. Vanished like smoke. I picked up the photograph. Studied it with the mild interest of someone looking at a stranger. Pretty woman. Looks like she could handle herself. Oh, she could, Luis agreed. Took down half our operation in Arizona. Very impressive work, very thorough. My employers respected her skills, even as she was destroying their business. He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. The thing is, Rosa, they found her partner, Marcus Rivera. Such a tragic accident. Brake failure on a mountain road. Very sad. The words hit me like physical blows, but I kept my expression neutral. Marcus had been more than a partner. He'd been my mentor, my friend, the closest thing to family I had left. The marshals had told me he died in a car accident, but they'd never confirmed it was the cartel. Hearing it from Luis's lips made it real in a way that still felt like a knife twisting in my chest. That's terrible, I said, setting the photo down. You want me to warm up that coffee for you? Luis studied me for a long moment, then chuckled. Softly, you know what I find interesting, Rosa? This diner. Perfect place to hide, isn't it? Far from anywhere important. Steady stream of transient customers. Easy access to Mexico if someone needed to run. He was playing with me now like a cat with a mouse. Part of me wanted to drop the act. To confront him with the truth. The bigger part of me, the part trained by years of dangerous undercover work, knew that my only chance of survival lay in maintaining the deception. I wouldn't know about that, I said. I just work here. Miguel does the hiring and firing. Miguel Vasquez, Luis said, and my blood chilled further. 62 years old, owns this place for 8 years, lives alone above the hardware store on 3rd Street. Has a daughter in college, University of Texas, studying pre-med. Maria, very pretty girl. The threat was unmistakable. He knew about Miguel. Knew about Maria. Had probably researched everyone I'd come into contact with since arriving in El Paso. That's how thorough the Aguila Cartel was. They didn't just kill their enemies. They killed everyone their enemies cared about. I felt the familiar weight of the Glock 19 strapped to my ankle, hidden beneath the loose-fitting uniform pants. Deregulation said surrendered agents should return all weapons, but some habits die hard. I'd kept one gun, just one, for situations exactly like this, but pulling it would mean exposing myself, confirming his suspicions. And even if I managed to kill Luis, which wasn't guaranteed, the cartel would know they'd found me. They'd send. Others would never stop hunting. Sounds like you know a lot about this place, I said carefully. You thinking of buying it? Luis laughed, a genuine sound that was somehow more terrifying than his predatory smile. You know, I almost believe you. The accent is perfect. West Texas probably grew up in Lubbock or Amarillo. The body language is exactly right. Tired working woman, probably supporting someone else. Maybe an aging parent or an ex-husband who doesn't pay child support. He took another sip of coffee, savoring both the drink and the moment. But there are little things. The way you scan the room when you think no one's watching. That's tactical awareness, not waitress paranoia. The callus on your right index finger from trigger time, and your stance. Even relaxed, you're balanced on the balls of your feet, ready to move in any direction. My cover was blown, but I couldn't acknowledge it, not yet. I don't know what you're talking about, I said. But if you're not going to order food, maybe you should ... double quotes. Luis reached out faster than a striking snake. His hand clamped around my wrist with crushing force. Up close, I could smell his cologne, expensive and cloying. Could see the gold caps on his teeth when he smiled. Agent Isabella Moreno, he said softly. It's time to come home. The elderly couple in the corner booth chose that moment to stand up. The husband helping his wife into her sweater. The trucker at the counter was absorbed in something on his phone. No one was paying attention to us, which meant no witnesses when Luis inevitably made his move. I had seconds to decide. Maintain the cover and hope he was bluffing, or reveal myself and fight. The decision was made for me when I felt the pressure of a gun barrel against my ribs through his jacket. We're going to walk out of here very quietly, Luis murmured. My car is parked behind the building. We're going to take a little drive. Have a longer conversation about your former career. This was it, the moment every undercover agent dreads. When the elaborate fiction collapses and only survival matters. I looked him straight in the eyes and let Rosa Martinez die. Luis Herrera, I said in my real voice, dropping the Texas accent. 15 years with the Aguila organization. Started as muscle in Juárez, worked his way up through torture and murder. Currently wanted by the FBI for the execution of federal agents in Arizona, New Mexico, and California. His grip on my wrist tightened, but I saw surprise flicker across his face. He'd expected fear, pleading, maybe an attempt to bargain. He hadn't expected me to profile him like he was already in custody. 3 tours in Afghanistan before you went bad, I continued conversationally. Sniper qualified, expert in close quarters combat. But you made one mistake tonight, Luis. What's that? He asked, genuinely curious despite the gun pressed against my side. I smiled, and for the first time in 3 months, it felt completely genuine. You assumed I was alone. The diner's back door exploded inward as 6 figures in tactical gear stormed through. D agents, armed with automatic weapons, moving with practiced precision. The elderly couple suddenly straightened. Their frail postures replaced by the stance of trained professionals. The trucker spun around on his stool. His phone replaced by a service pistol. Federal agents. Nobody move. Luis's eyes went wide with shock and rage. He'd walked into a trap so perfect it could have been choreographed. That's right, I said as agents surrounded our booth. Rosa Martinez was bait. Isabella Moreno never left the DI. I just went fishing for bigger fish. Luis started to raise his weapon, but I was faster. 3 months of forced inactivity had made me hungry for action. I grabbed his gun hand with both of mine, twisted sharply to break his grip, brought my knee up hard into his solar plexus. He doubled over, gasping, and I relieved him of his pistol with movements so smooth they felt like muscle memory. Luis Herrera, I said as agents moved in to cuff him. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, and about 15 other federal charges that are going to put you away forever. As they hauled him toward the door, he managed to look back at me with something like respect. How long? He gasped. How long what? How long were you planning this? I straightened my name tag, the one that read Rosa, and smiled. Since the day Marcus died. Every cartel member who entered his name into a computer. Every phone call about the tragic accident. Every inquiry about my whereabouts. We've been tracking all of it. Building a case that's going to destroy your entire organization. The truth was more complex than that. The marshals had placed me in witness protection, but I'd convinced my former supervisor to let me operate as bait. Miguel's diner was wired with more surveillance equipment than most government buildings. Every customer for the past 3 months had been background checked. The random people who'd become regulars were all federal agents. Rosa Martinez had been real in every way except the one that mattered. She was a trap designed to catch monsters. Lise disappeared through the door, and the adrenaline finally caught up with me. I sank into the booth he'd occupied, my hands shaking as the magnitude of what we'd accomplished hit home. Agent Susan Chun, my former supervisor, approached the table with a satisfied expression. "Outstanding work, Isabella. The recording equipment got everything." His confession about Marcus, the threats against civilians, conspiracy charges that'll stick. "How many others?" I asked. 17 arrests tonight. Coordinated raids across 3 states. We've been watching everyone who came looking for you, following them back to their handlers, their safe houses, their money drops. Luis Herrera was the linchpin. With his testimony, we can roll up the entire Aguila organization. I nodded, feeling hollow despite the victory. "And now?" Susan sat across from me, her expression growing serious. "Now you get to choose. Full reinstatement to the D, your pick of assignments. Or we can set you up with a new identity somewhere far from here. Let you live Rosa's life, for real." I looked around the diner that had been my home for 3 months. The cracked vinyl booths, the flickering fluorescent lights, the coffee maker that hissed like an angry snake. It had been a prison and a sanctuary. A stage for an elaborate deception that had finally delivered justice for Marcus and countless other victims. "Can I have a few days to think about it?" "Take all the time you need," Susan said. "But Isabella, for what it's worth, the D needs agents like you. People who can disappear into any identity, any situation, and emerge when the moment is right." After the agents left and the crime scene was processed, I found myself alone in the diner as dawn approached. Miguel would arrive soon to open for the breakfast crowd. I'd have to explain why his waitress was actually a federal agent and his diner had been the center of a major law enforcement operation. I poured myself a cup of coffee, black like Lou's had ordered, sat in the booth where my old life had collided with my new one. The photograph he'd shown me still lay on the table. Agent Isabella Moreno in her dress uniform, looking confident and determined. I picked it up, studying the woman I used to be. She looked younger, somehow, less worn down by the weight of secrets and loss. But she also looked naive, unprepared for the sacrifices this job would demand. Rosa Martinez had taught me things Isabella Moreno never knew. How to find peace in simple work. How to connect with ordinary people living ordinary lives. How to value quiet moments between the storms of violence and deception. Maybe the question wasn't whether to return to the DIA or disappear into civilian life. Maybe the question was how to be both women. The federal agent who fought monsters in the darkness and the waitress who served coffee to people, just trying to get through another day. I finished my coffee as the sun painted the desert sky in shades of orange and pink. In a few hours, Miguel would flip the sign from closed to open. The diner would fill with truckers and locals looking for breakfast and conversation. Some of them might ask about the excitement from last night, the federal agents and the arrests. I'd tell them the truth. That sometimes the most ordinary places become battlegrounds in wars most people never know are being fought. That heroes don't always wear uniforms or carry badges. Sometimes they wear name tags and pour coffee and wait patiently for their moment to strike back at the darkness. Outside, El Paso was waking up. Somewhere in federal custody, Luis Herrera was probably trying to negotiate his way out of life in prison. Somewhere in Washington, Prosecutors were building cases that would dismantle one of Mexico's most powerful criminal organizations. And here in Miguel's diner, I sat between my two identities, Agent Isabella Moreno and Rosa Martinez, wondering which one would answer when Miguel walked through that door. The coffee maker hissed, and I smiled. Maybe I didn't have to choose. Maybe the best undercover agents were the ones who learned something true from every identity they inhabited. After all, the most dangerous adversaries were the ones who could be anyone, anywhere, until the moment they decided to be themselves. I straightened my name tag one more time and got ready to face whatever came next. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.